Hey there, folks. This is Garrett. We're starting up right at noon for the Command Z Micro Intensive, and then also question and answer for any of you who are joining us that have any questions you want answered. But if not, that's just fine, because what I've got for you today is a sequence of experiences, exercises, and concepts that are all deliberately designed and sequenced in a way that will give you a taste of what it's like to integrate radical undoing into your life. Maybe a better way to put it would be a way to experience what it's like being more aware on a more consistent basis of what's actually going on, and giving that far more precedence than all the stories and history and politics and all these external affairs that seem to be more dominant. Okay, so we're going to give prominence to the direct observation that's going on in your life, and then have an experience of what it's like to live from that place, as opposed to doing things out of fear, acting out of perceived idea to avoid a catastrophe in the future, and that sort of thing. So the way we're going to start this is I want you to make a list. So I'll give you guys just a couple seconds to grab a piece of paper and a pen, but even if you just have your phone, open up a note-taking document, or since you're watching on the computer, just open up a text document and make a quick list. But you can do this right now while you're watching. And then even if you're watching this on video, go ahead and pause, grab yourself a notebook, and then get started. But what I want to start out with, before we even get into anything else, is to make a list of things that you've been putting off that would make you feel good, and that might advance your life in the direction you want to advance it in. So let's spend 2 or 3 minutes right away making that list. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and make one of my own. Now, these can be things you've been putting off for like 15 or 20 years if you want. It doesn't have to be just, going and doing some work in the garden, or something that you put off in the last few days. This could be something that you really wanted to do, and then you set aside at some point, and then you never return to, but now that we're bringing up this idea and doing this list, it's coming to mind again. If that comes to mind, put it on the list. Okay, it's never too late to get started on most of these things, but that's not even what we're concerned with quite yet. Right now, just make the list of anything you've been putting off that would make you feel good, genuinely feel good, and advance your life in the direction you want it to advance in. Okay, so let's start right now, and we'll do this for about 2 or 3 minutes. Just go ahead and make your list. And if you guys have any questions about that, then just go ahead and let me know. You can type them into the Q&A box on the side panel, and then also you can put them into the chat box. Okay, so let's make sure there's nothing coming in the chat. Okay, cool. Got the chat there. And let's make your list. So 3 minutes starting now. And again, for those of you just joining us, we're making a list of anything you've been putting off that would potentially make you feel good if you did it, and also advance your life in the direction you want it to go. Okay. So just keep on making that list. And again, this will become important as we go through the rest of the micro-intensive today. But we're starting with the list, things you're putting off that would make you feel good if you did them and would help you advance your life in the direction you want it to go. So keep making that list. Just about a minute and a half longer. Okay, now if you're watching on video, of course, you can go ahead and write to your heart's content everything that you notice that you've been putting off. That would be fun for you to take some action on. Now this list can also include, just to let you know, you could also include on the list things that you don't necessarily want to do, but that once you do, will make you feel good that you have done it. And then again, also could advance you or your life in the direction you want it to go. So again, for those of you just joining us, we just made a list of things you're putting off that would make you feel good to do them and would advance your life in some way if you took action toward those things. Okay? So now that we've got that, and if you haven't got it, just make a list of a couple things then. Even write one or two down. That's fine. Just have something in mind. Now, the idea here today is to get you focused on what's actually going on what you can directly perceive and engage with in your life, and then to turn the volume down a little bit on all the stories and all the pressures, the ideas, the things you have to live up to, the ideas we carry around about ourselves, and the fears of how things could go, all those kinds of things. Turn the volume down on that, and then turn the volume up on what you can actually observe, what you can actually experience, and what you can actually take charge of and have an effect within. Okay, so that's what we're here to accomplish today. So first, just take a deep breath. Get relaxed. If your legs are crossed, cross them. Put your feet flat on the floor, or if you're laying down watching this, that's great. But sit comfortably. Get your back nice and straight and take a deep breath. And take another. Now each time you take a deep breath throughout the next 51 minutes, I want you to remind yourself in your mind that you're dehypnotizing yourself. Every time we take a breath, you're dehypnotizing yourself. So we're going to do it between each of the concepts or each of the exercises here, as well as at the same time as doing the exercises. So rather than take a lot of notes or try and memorize what's going on here, instead just pay attention to your breathing while you're watching the video, while you're doing whatever exercises we do here. Okay? And this is the kind of thing you would be doing in the intensive, but you would be waking up in the morning, starting off your day with a certain framework, a certain set of perceptions and ideas. Do some exercises, break all that apart, and then enter your life in a new and more aware way that allows you to make less effort but more movement toward what you actually want. Okay? And that makes sense, I'm sure, to some of you who have done some of these exercises before. But if not, by the end of the next 50 minutes, you will have that experience for yourself as well. One thing to keep in mind is it's best to start with 100% self-acceptance. We call that, in Undoing Land and Command Z Land, we call that 100% juice. The way that works is no matter how many additives there are in a bottle of juice, it's still 100% juice. So we say that in terms of no matter how much conditioning you've gone through, no matter how much pressures or things you think are wrong with you or that you need to change or fix or improve, regardless of those thoughts or those compulsions, you can still have 100% self-acceptance exactly as you are, regardless of the desires to change or fix or improve yourself. All right, even those can be accepted as part of what you're experiencing. Okay, so we want what you're experiencing and observing to become primary, and the other contents of the thoughts, ideas, beliefs, and assumptions to be secondary. Okay, the storyline based things going on in your mind. So no matter how much additives, no matter how much conditioning, there's always 100% juice. So you can remind yourself of that. Take a deep breath. Appreciate the fact you have a body to do that with. All right? Now, next, what I want us to do is a form of paying attention to what's going on around us. The idea here is to have ruthless enjoyment of yourself and what is. Ruthlessly pursuing enjoyment of yourself and of what is possible for you to experience. Okay, so there's times where I've been engaged in conversations I didn't really like, felt relatively frustrated, had to get certain points across, and made that rather unpleasant for myself and sometimes for the people I'm communicating with. But now I notice when I'm having those same discussions, I can have an appreciation for every point of view that's coming up across the board. Not that I value any of them more or less than any others, but that I can have an appreciation for the texture, for example, of a conversation, rather than getting hung up in an emotional reaction because of the content of one of the statements in the conversation. Hopefully that makes sense to you. So what you can do while you're having an experience with other people, while you're having an experience you've called uncomfortable, your goal in those moments can be to ruthlessly derive joy out of paying attention to what's actually going on. Okay? What gets in the way is our ideas of what's supposed to be happening, and then a disappointment or a level of frustration at the fact that what we thought should be happening isn't matching up with what we're observing happening. Okay, but you can always rely on what you're observing. That is stable, that's constant, that's consistent. Pay attention to what's actually going on, and then examine what your ideas about it are if you want to. Okay, but more often than not, when you bring your awareness to what's actually going on in you and around you, then you know what your real options are, and you can actually start to take action, take charge of that situation, whatever it is, with some sense of joy, with some sense of strength and power, because again, you're aware of what's actually there and available to you. Rather than getting hung up on thinking you're missing something, that you've somehow been let down, and then convincing yourself you're defeated, so then you don't choose to see any opportunities that are around you or act in a creative way based on what you're capable of. All right, instead it's of defeat, and then you don't do anything about it, and then it reinforces the idea that you're defeated. Okay, so you can't be defeated. You just have to remember that you can't be defeated, and then you won't be. You'll always know that your life is open-ended, and whenever you decide to become aware, then there's a million different options you can access in that field of your perception, which is pretty basic, pretty simple. All right. The interesting thing is there are so many layers of complexity to observe and to enjoy and to explore. Okay, so it's like a constant adventure. You could decide to go outside and look at the garden, look around in the grass, and kind of explore what's happening on that little micro environment level in your own yard, or you could walk to a park and watch that expand. Then you could go to a downtown area and engage with a bunch of people in that type of situation. All right, so there's a million different places and layers of things for you to explore. Okay, down to the most micro type scientific, molecular observations, all the way to the most macro, say extreme sports, physical, engaging activities. So there's a million different things that you can do. The idea is getting yourself tuned into your body, tuned into what you're actually feeling and doing, and then bringing joy into your experiences and following the flow of what you actually feel going on, as opposed to running around being afraid, feeling limited, feeling defeated, and whatnot. Okay, and I'm going to see if I can bring some folks directly into the call here. Let's see if we can do this. I'll try one more time, and if that works. Okay, cool. Invitation posted. So for those of you trying to join the call here, I have sent you an invite. If you notice that, you may have to click on that somehow to join right in the call. If not, then my apologies, but we will continue going. So you can just keep following along with the exercises. Again, if you have a question, click on the question box and you can type that in there, and I'll make sure to check it and bring it up in the conversation. Okay, so something also that I made note of is that it's remarkable to me just how simple it actually is, what's really going on at any given moment. Okay, there's layers of complexity that we end up dealing with. So, for example, to live on a monthly basis, paying rent for somewhere, planning for supplies or meals, that type of thing. Okay, so there's an appearance of complexity in what's going on, but in any given moment, you only have one thing to do, and that's whatever it is that you do in that moment. Now, that may sound simple, and it actually is, but how often do we get wrapped up into some kind of mental games and dramas for an hour, for a few hours, for a day, a week, a month, or years, wrapped into cyclical ways of thinking, habitual emotional reactions to life? How often does that happen? And then remain trapped in that without any way to see outside of it. So what we're doing here with the undoing stuff is flipping that on its head, helping you to become aware of what's going on in you and around you right now, and then feeling a lot better based on the firm knowledge and awareness of, again, what's actually going on in your life that you can feel and touch and enjoy. Okay, the basic idea, again, finding joy, humor, and beauty in the fabric of your daily life. Okay, having some appreciation arise just from being aware of the benefits of having a body, for example. Just by becoming aware of the bare facts of existence itself and how simple that is, okay, then you can feel a sense of appreciation for what you're actually doing here. From there, you can start to think about, well, one interesting point which we'll bring up a little bit later is the good life. I'll make a quick note so I don't forget, but the good life, that's something that we're going to want to look at. So let yourself think for a moment on what the good life would be. What is the good life? Okay? We might all come up with different various ways of conceiving that, but we'll deal with that a little bit later. So next, we're going to take another dehypnotizing breath. We've been talking for a little bit. I drifted off into some thoughts about the workshop, so now we're going to come back to it. Take a dehypnotizing breath. Let everything relax. Back to square one. So again, all of this, there's a great Leonard Cohen song called Coming Back to You, but it's nice if you think about it as coming back to yourself, okay, coming home to yourself. If you think of the term home, a lot of people say they are looking for a sense of home, and some people just reminisce about having a sense of home, okay, and then leaving that, and then never coming back to it. But what I'll propose is that feeling that you get when you think of what home is something you can come back to in yourself at any time. That's your true home, so to speak, whereas everything else is an external experience going on around that. So wherever you are, come back to yourself. That's what we're doing with the dehypnotizing breath, rather than getting caught up in ideas, thoughts, obsessions, and whatnot about anything. You're just setting that aside, coming back to you. Okay, so one more dehypnotizing breath. And then what we're going to do next is the face stretches. So those of you watching, you're probably familiar with this, but again, repetition is key. So we'll do that right now, regardless of how you're feeling. By doing the dehypnotizing breath and then doing the face stretching, come back to you how you are right now. Okay, break apart the chronic ways our emotions and our emotional reactions take place, and then also create more mental space, and then from there allow more clarity of perception, of observation, and then of thinking. Okay, so we're going to do that by stretching apart the face and breaking apart the chronic muscle tensions in it. We'll do that really slowly while breathing. So just move your face slowly. You can do as if you come upon a particularly strong or solid face with a lot of tension. Hold it there really tightly, but I want to remind you, use your forehead, brows, eyeballs themselves in different directions, your nose, nostrils, cheeks, lips, jaw, and tongue. Sometimes your lips come in, they come out. Tongue, eyes, and then notice what you're doing. Again, I crossed my legs. My fingers were getting a little bit tense. Let everything come back to relaxing in the rest of your body. Move and stretch your face, and then hold a particular position now. Holding a certain face with a lot of tension. Even more, and then take a full breath in and let your face relax. And just let it relax. Okay. Now, if you're anything like me, you might notice some tingling throughout your entire face now. Also notice a little bit more awareness of the tension across the forehead. It makes me feel inclined to want to rub those muscles a little bit like that. So if you feel that, you can kind of move around, feel what's going on in your face, and enjoy those sensations, all right? Now next, what I want us to do is I'm going to give you 3 more of the exercises that we do in the Radical Undoing Intensives, but during the intensives you end up doing these for longer times over the course of multiple days. So right now we're just going to have an approximation of how those would be, but you can take and do these on your own and expand them as much as you want. I call this next exercise the Man in the Iron Mask. Now what that exercise requires is in 2 parts. Number 1 is the looking with labeling. So you look around and you label, now which should be pretty easy because that's what our mind is doing all the time, slapping labels, vomiting labels up onto everything that it sees. So what we're going to do is focus on that and say it out loud. Right now we'll do it for about 90 seconds, 1 minute, between 1 and 2 minutes here. And we'll say out loud everything you see, everything that comes into your visual awareness, and then the labels as they come to your mind. So we do looking with labeling. That's part 1 of Man in the Iron Mask. The first version of Man in the Iron Mask. So this is a suite of exercises within this one overarching label. So let's start that right now. 90 seconds of looking and saying everything you're seeing. So you can do this along with me. There is some rain outside. See the rain falling between the trees. The leaves on the trees are moving. There's 3 orange cars parked on the street over there. Another car just drove by. The tree is moving slightly. The leaves move with the wind. Wetness on the streets. There's a microphone in front of me. There's the computer. You can see my own reflection on the video there. There's a whiteboard on the background. I notice paintings and things behind me on the screen in front. The rain continues to come down. There's a wind blowing it slightly to the side. There's also some red leaves blowing in the wind. Another truck drives by. So you just say whatever it is that you see in that exact way. Okay? That's preparation for part 2 of the exercise, which is looking without labeling. So now you'll take a dehypnotizing breath in between. And then attempt to take in what's going on through your visual senses, through your eyes, but try to let it in without the labels. Okay, so be silent, notice your breathing, and at very least notice the difference between what you're actually seeing with your eyes and the labels your mind is putting on those things, okay? And favor the visual data. It can feel kind of strange at first. You might also notice there's something stunningly beautiful that can start to happen when you take it all in at once. Take in the whole entire visual experience itself. The act of seeing is what you're paying attention to, okay? Rather than getting obsessed about labeling the content of what you're seeing and splitting it up into tinier and tinier pieces. So hopefully some of you noticed that while you did the exercise. Again, I'll recap so you can do this on your own. That's Man in the Iron Mask Part 1, and what that is looking with labeling. Say do that for 5 minutes. Take some dehypnotizing breaths in between. Then do looking without labeling, without saying out loud what you're seeing, and without breaking it into those pieces for another 5 minutes. All right? And do that every day for a week and notice how your acuity in the exercise gets better over time, increases over time. So now the next exercise we'll do is to pull your shoulders up to your ears. So again, sit straight, put your feet flat on the floor. Pull your shoulders up to your ears as tightly as you can. And you want to notice, are you pulling them back? Are you turning them forward at all? Just try and do it straight. Pull them up as tight as you can. You might notice you start tensing your neck. Just let your neck come back down. Let it be relaxed. And keep the shoulders coming up as tightly as you can. And notice your breathing. Notice what you're doing with the rest of your body. Are you tilting your belly forwards? Are you squeezing your legs? What are you doing with your hands or your shoulders or your elbows? Tense, excuse me, your shoulders should be tense. And keep pulling the shoulders up. So we'll make sure we do this for a full minute while breathing. Pulling the shoulders up tighter. Full breath in. And say, ah, and thrust your shoulders back down. And take a dehypnotizing breath between exercises. Let the shoulders relax even more. Feel what's going on in your shoulders. And then what we'll do is move to Man in the Iron Mask number 2, which again, we'll do this for 90 seconds each. If you do it on your own, try this one, maybe the second week that you're doing this exercise. Do it with listening rather than with looking. All right, so again, the first half of the exercise you do listening and labeling. So you'll listen for a little bit, then you'll say out loud what it is you think you heard. So I hear movement from the neighbors upstairs. A little bit of rumbling of cars driving, but I don't see the cars anywhere. Sound of some kind of machinery, maybe like a utility truck. Air movement, sound of a leaf hitting the window. Sound of the computer's fan on very slightly. Sound of my foot moving on the desk and on the floor below. Sound of movement in my own mouth, movement of my body here. Sound of that car driving by and the water hitting the tires and spraying up into the mud flaps there, into the wheel wells. Okay, so that's how you do that. If you do that in different locations, if you do it outside in a city, for example, sometimes you might notice you can start to hear all kinds of different things. There's layers and layers of sound occurring. Then the second part of the exercise, what we do is, again, listening without labeling. So what you want to do is notice the difference at first between all the labels your mind is trying to throw onto the things you're hearing, and then the actual act of listening itself. Okay, just letting the auditory data come in, same with the thing that we did with the visuals. So you might think of the second part of each exercise as removing the iron mask, so to speak. The iron mask being composed of all the ideas and all the labels and all the categories and all the judgments that we throw onto everything that we're observing. Now, second part of the exercise. First part, you acknowledge and recognize that the mask is there and watch how it works. Second exercise is you take off the mask. Let in the data without all the judgments, okay, without all the ideas and the labels. So now we're going to do that with listening. Just listen without labeling what's going on. Let the act of listening be what you're doing, okay? Just noticing the auditory data. And you can close your eyes if that helps and just listen. No other purpose but just listening. Okay? So just make note now. What did you notice from doing that? How did it feel just to be listening? Was there any difference between listening when you were labeling everything versus just listening on its own? And just ask yourself those questions. And then take a dehypnotizing breath, and we'll move on to the next step. Now for the next exercise, we're going to do the flop. Now it's a little bit harder for me to demonstrate this one. I'm going to have to take out the earpiece, but you'll still be able to hear me just fine with the microphone. So what I'm going to do is stand up so you guys can get a little bit better view. And you can try this on your own, but let me demonstrate it first, and then you can go ahead and try it as well. So you're not going to be able to see my entire body while I do this, but you'll be able to see good enough to approximate it on your own. The idea here is you want to be able to flop over. If you're wearing a necklace, take that off. It can hit you in the face, hit you in the teeth, and it's not a pleasant thing. The idea is you take a full inhalation, you say ah, and you let your torso flop over all the way down, exhale completely, and then inhale as you come back up. So I'll demonstrate it once, then you guys can do that along with me. Again, if you're watching this on video, pause it. Take the time to do 10 or 15 of these until you really feel it. The idea here is you want to get a sense of free fall. And what we're learning through this movement is something very important. I'll bring up what that is after you try the movement, okay? So maybe you'll discern that for yourself. How can this be useful in every situation in your life, okay? Inhale fully, say ah, put a bend in your knees, say ah. Ah, let yourself fall. Exhale fully, inhale with the movement back up. Say ah again, ah, and let yourself fall. So you inhale while you're standing back up. Okay. Say ah. Inhale fully. Say ah. Put a bend in your knees. Say ah. Ah. Let yourself fall. Come back up. Exhale fully. Inhale. And then stand there for a moment and feel how that felt. I'm going to go ahead and mute your audio there, Sean. Just because there's getting an echo between you and I. Okay. So we'll go ahead and put back in the earpiece. And hopefully you guys got a sense for that exercise. But the idea is you stand up, say ah, and let yourself flop over. Now, Sean, you can come on the call there. If you still got the invite, that's fine. I just had to mute your audio due to the echo that I was noticing. So I'll go ahead and click invite again, see if we get you back on. But if not, no worries. Hopefully you can see and hear and engage with the Q&A there if there's anything you want to ask. All right, so now we did flopping. Any questions about that, just type them into the comments under the video and I can address those or add them to the Q&A right here. All right, folks, so we just did flopping over. For those of you who have done that exercise, do you guys have any ideas how that actually plays out? How can that be useful in your life, in your day-to-day life, getting more of what you want, getting out of your own way? Any ideas? Well, one of the ways that it can help in your day-to-day life is if you're hung up on some idea, if you start to get afraid of something, or you start to think you have to do something in a certain way, or you start to have an emotional reaction to something, especially if that emotional reaction is to something in your mind that's not actually going on, something you don't have to deal with, but that you can't seem to let go of in your head. Maybe you're trying to go to sleep at night, some idea is just running around in there over and over and over again. So what you can do is stand up and do that flopping exercise that we just did. Take a full breath in. Take a couple dehypnotizing breaths. First, we'll take one right now. Let all your breath out. Then stand up and do the flop. Say ah. Let your torso flop over. You know, you can duplicate it with your arm. Let your arm be up. Say ah. Ah. And you let it flop. Now notice there's a sense of free fall there, even in your arm. You want to feel that same sense of free fall in your torso and in your head. Let your neck be loose when you flop over. Okay, so you say ah, let yourself flop. Let everything relax. Let all the breath out. Inhale, stand back up again and do it again. Now you might notice it takes 2 or 3 times. No matter how many times you've done it, sometimes your back might be looser than other times. So give yourself the first 2 or 3 repetitions just to feel if you're even letting go, to loosen up a little bit. And then finally, after the 4th or 5th, you might notice, it's easier to just let go. Now, if you're focusing on something in your mind, or you're afraid, or you're upset, or you're worried about something, okay, so do that movement 10 or 15 times and allow that sense of letting go in your body translate into a sense of letting go in your mind. Let go deliberately of the things that are going on there. Now, I'm not saying don't pay attention to them. I'm saying let go of them. And the way you do that is by paying attention to what's actually going on in the field of your direct observation, giving that your primary focus, and then taking actions within that based on what you actually want to do. Okay? which I'm arguing again is attempting to find joy, humor, and beauty in your experience, whatever that is. Even when it seems difficult, even when you're experiencing what you call discomfort. Right? Still paying attention to the richness and depth of the bare facts of your existence. Staying aware of that level at all times is going to give you a clearer path toward what you want and toward enjoyment than if you're running around doing it based on ideas, assumptions, and a sense of a need to change something about yourself. Okay? There's a way that change and growth takes place is by allowing it to take place. That's why we did the flop, for letting go. The way you can get out of your own way again, paying attention to your breathing, and being aware of what's actually going on. It's that simple. Okay? Doesn't mean it's easy, because there are so many millions of temptations of ways to go get lost in thought, lost in beliefs and assumptions about what you should be doing with your life, what you're supposed to be thinking of, these issues you need to pay attention to. For example, I was part of an interesting and fun conversation last night about some of these actual issues, and some of the people in the conversation were getting very offended and very upset that other people in the conversation were not paying more attention to the suffering of various people in the world. Okay, being aware of suffering and paying attention to it all the time. And then another person in the conversation, so I was just sitting back and watching and enjoying this thing as it played out in front of me, not really invested in it in any one direction or another, but finding the joy and richness in the whole thing. But I noticed that some of the other people then said they are not going to carry around the suffering of other people in the world. Now, that doesn't mean if your buddy is out on the street and you see him get hit by a car that you don't run out and try and help because that's what you feel like doing. Okay? But what that does mean is that you will not carry around the idea of suffering of all these different situations in the world and then let that weigh you down and not take action on what it is that you want and what you genuinely have to bring into your life, into existence, what you have to create or to enjoy. Okay, so there's no need to carry around the suffering of the world with you all the time. You can do what you can do in the field of your observation, of your awareness, and if you choose to do things to help people with some kind of perceived issue, then go ahead and do so, but you'll do so because it is natural to you. It comes organically to you in the flow of your life as you're paying attention to it. You won't be doing things because you feel like you should or because you feel like you're compelled to do so. All right, so you can throw away a lot of the things you feel compelled to do from external forces. Once you give primary importance to the direct flow of your own organic life. Okay, it's that simple, and that's what all these exercises lead up to. That's what we're saying is the good life. The good life can only be determined by you doing what you genuinely want to do most of the time. That's the only way to really define the good life. It wouldn't be you having all these things you're supposed to want and not really enjoying them and feeling oppressed by the things you have to do to get them, and feeling upset with the day-to-day feeling and flow of your existence. Okay, that's not the good life, no matter who tells you it is, no matter how many times you try to convince yourself of it. The idea is to tap into yourself, what's really going on, feel what it is you genuinely want to do and enjoy doing, no matter how complex that is. Okay, there's lots of ways to get to what you want, no matter how complex the path there is, and we'll get to that in just a moment. But we're going to do one more manning the iron mask type exercise here. Now, we already did, remember, you did part one, which was looking and labeling, and then looking without labels. Then we did part two, listening and labeling, and then listening without labels. And then we also did part three, or now we're about to do part three, excuse me, which is sensing and feeling, and then feeling without the labeling, which is one of the more difficult layers to do this on. But this is where you find the power to cut through even the most severe emotional states or emotional reactions into a sense of joyous curiosity, of just observing the organic flow of sensation that's going on in your body, okay, regardless of what it is. Now, you might find it more difficult if there's something painful, but what you also might find is that what you're chronically referring to as painful can unfold into something a little bit different than you might think when you start to bring your awareness to it in the way that I'm about to explain here. So first, what you'll do is sensing and feeling. So we can do that together. Right now, you just say out loud everything you're sensing and feeling in your body. Those of you who have done undoing sessions with me or else on your own, hopefully you've done a decent amount of this exercise. But even if you haven't, it's pretty simple. Again, the idea is sit still and to not make interpretations. So you just say out loud everything you sense and feel. And we'll do it right now for about 90 seconds. And then we'll get to the second part of the exercise, which again, like I said, is more difficult than with the others, but you'll get a little taste of it today. When you do this on your own, do it for at least 5 minutes, and then another 5 minutes of the feeling without the labels. Now for this exercise, in this particular way, it can be good for you to sit up or even to stand up because you'll be less likely to fall asleep or to fall into fantasizing and getting lost in the thought layer. But if that happens, no big deal. You bring your awareness back to the body. So I'm going to start by saying, feel an itch above the right eye. There is movement in the eyes. There's a little bit of a twitch in the left pectoral muscle in the chest. Hands felt tense. Legs. Turn down your audio because that way my audio can continue going. Sorry. Got it. You can hear me. Awesome. So there's an itch above the eyelid. Feel the hand resting on the lap. There's some tension in the neck, back of the neck. There was pressure in the back of the neck. Itch above the right eye. Movement of the lips, jaw and tongue with the talking. Feel the vibration of the voice down in the belly. Pressure of the right leg above the left leg, uncrossing the legs. Feel a sense of heaviness in the feet, touching the floor. Itch above the outside of the left eyebrow. Itch above the center of the right eye and the forehead. Relaxation in the left wrist. Slight pressure in the diaphragm and the belly. Itch above the right eye. Okay, so you just say those things now we just did it for 90 seconds, maybe almost 2 minutes. But if you do that for 5 minutes, then the next step is, we'll do this again for 90 seconds here, is to just pay attention and let that feeling layer wash over you, but without any labels. Now, if you notice the labels coming up, watch them come up and watch them go away, but don't latch on to them this time. And you don't have to say them out loud. Just notice the layer of feeling washing over you. And it's easy to get lost in thought. If you do, come back to that feeling layer again. You can just run your awareness through your entire body one more time, from your head, through your face, through your neck, your shoulders, down through your arms, out to your hands, back up to your neck again, into the chest, through the rib cage, down into the belly, lower belly, pelvis, legs, lower back, down to the knees, down through the calves, into the ankles, into the feet, and then bring your awareness back to what's going on here. And we'll take a dehypnotizing breath, come back to the flow of your life as you find it right now. Okay, so that's Man in the Iron Mask, part 3. Again, I said it's a suite of exercises. As you might guess, there's a couple other senses you can do it with. It can be very interesting doing it with scent. If you can do it out in a park somewhere, do it first by labeling all the scents and then go through and experience the scents as something separate from the labels that you put onto them. Now, the same thing you can do with taste. And an interesting way to do that is to create a meal or have someone else create a meal for you that you don't know what it is. Not that you haven't ever tried it before, but say go into the meal blindfolded and taste the food, and what you'll notice is you're essentially tasting whatever it is for the first time when you don't have the label. But as soon as you have a label to put on it, okay, a burrito or tacos or whatever label, it actually obscures your experience of the taste data itself. Okay? So you can imagine what's happening when you're going into situations full of emotion, full of reaction, full of expectation, and full of tension, is you're not even seeing or experiencing what's actually going on. You're filtering it through all these ideas, through all these other layers. That's why it's the Man in the Iron Mask. It's weighing you down, all these ideas and interpretations that you're carrying around with you. So you first acknowledge that that's there, pay attention to how it operates, and then take it off and become aware of what it's like without that. Okay, and that's what it requires. An iron mask, if you want to carry around all the ideas, all the suffering of the world, all the things that you think you're supposed to be paying attention to, you know, all the issues we're supposed to take sides on, and then not to mention all your personal desires, things you think you need to change, expectations from other people, and so on and so on and so on, all the worries, inability to enjoy yourself at the most basic level. Okay? So we want to remove that mask as many times as possible throughout the day. And you do that by doing the various undoing exercises whenever they come to mind. But in order for them to come to mind, you have to do them a few times to let your body know what's up. Give it a word or a tool with which it can communicate with you. Okay, so in the beginning, you're using your mind to become aware of your body again. Then you're allowing your body to communicate directly back to your mind, to bring you back into awareness. So over time, your body will then automatically dehypnotize you. It'll bring you back to awareness of what's actually going on in your life with ease, rather than you having to do it more forcefully with your mind. But in the beginning, you know, you have to update and install this software. All right. So we've got about 5 minutes left here. Some of the other things I wanted to bring up, again, was stop obstructing yourself. Okay, and the idea, again, here is to notice, bring into your awareness when you're obstructing yourself and how that's occurring. And then from there, take a dehypnotizing breath. Start to feel, again, what it is that you really want to do. Now, Sean, I'm not sure if you were here right at the beginning. One of the things we did at the very beginning was to make a list of all the things, or of a few things that maybe you're putting off. And it could be something you put off for 10 years, or it could be something you've been putting off for a week. It doesn't matter. Make a list of those things that you're putting off that would make you feel good to do, and that might advance you in your life toward what you want. Okay? So the idea there, and we'll get to that right at the end here, but it's to let yourself learn as you go. This is one way to unlock some of the things that it may seem impossible to do in your life, but that could bring you a lot of joy and a lot of success. And again, what do I mean by success? I mean creating situations in which you're able to do what you really want to do most of the time. Okay, and I'll argue underneath the idea of all the complexity of the things you could possibly want to do is just the finding and pursuit of joy, beauty, and humor in your life, okay, in whatever forms those happen to appeal to you the most, and the ones that you maybe haven't even experienced yet, okay. So the idea, the key to unlock a lot of those is just to let yourself learn as you go. If I hadn't let myself learn as I go, I wouldn't have a website. I wouldn't be doing this. I wouldn't be able to share these exercises with people all over the world. I wouldn't be able to spend most of my time doing things that I actually enjoy unless I finally let go of having to know ahead of time how I was going to do my life. I just fall into my life as many times as possible throughout the day, and if there's something I want to do, then I allow myself to figure out how to do it. And if I can't seem to do that, then I find someone else who can, and then I'm able to accomplish whatever it is I want to do. So there's no obstacles in the way, there's just stopping yourself from creating obstacles and then believing them to be real and then defeating yourself because you put that in your way and forgot that you did so. So never let not knowing how to do something prevent you from actually doing and getting what you want to do. If you don't know how, that's a good place to start. Oh, I don't know how to do this. So for example, I want to put on a little mentalist stage show here in Portland. So I've already collected a few addresses and a few contact information for a couple places where that would be a suitable thing to do. And then I've got a little list I'm working on of effects and things that I will put together into that stage show. And then practice that a little bit each day, and I'll bring that to life. But a few months ago I wouldn't have known, or let's say a year ago, I wouldn't have known where to even begin. But I found someone actually just got in touch with me and made available certain bits of knowledge that I needed in order to advance with that show, advance with that pursuit. So it went from something that was just a seemingly trifling idea in the beginning to something that I'm actually putting together, and that'll be, you know, a lot of fun to explore and experiment with. But there's nothing at stake there besides my own enjoyment. All right, it's not something I'm doing out of fear or out of lust for specific results or anything like that. It's just something that is satisfying unto itself. Okay, and the more of that you can experience each day, the more opportunities you'll perceive, and the more enjoyment, again, fun, enjoyment, and beauty that you're going to experience on a day-to-day, flowing, organic basis in your life. It's always there, it's always available, but again, real easy, real tempting, really seductive to fall into mental and emotional traps that convince you that there's something more important than actually participating in and enjoying the organic flow of your life. All right. One way to bring this into full awareness is by facing your own death, or at least the idea of your own death, paying attention to that. So go wander around in the graveyard if you have a chance. Bring your awareness to death, or the fact that everything you know is on its way out. It's already on its way out while you're looking at it, while you're perceiving it. Okay, everyone you know, all the ideas you have about who you are. I noticed the other day I looked out across the street and saw an older man walking with a walker, and it hit me pretty deep for a moment, and I realized, okay, that could be me walking with that walker at some point. No matter what I do, I could end up in that specific situation. But what did that do? It brought me again back to an appreciation of the organic flow of my life, which is stable, which is consistent, which no matter how everything changes within it, even the shape of my own body or the contours and form of what I'm experiencing, there is something consistent about paying attention to what is, this thread of direct observation. Whether you're walking with a walker, whether you're young or old, it doesn't matter. Pay attention and give primary focus to the thread of your direct observation. That's something that can't be taken away. Okay, but by paying attention to that level, by facing death and notice everything going away, you can start to drain the seriousness out of all these other issues. The so-called suffering of the world, okay? As soon as you come face to face with your own death, then you realize all you've ever had is that thread of direct observation and then a bunch of ideas stacked heavy on top of it. Okay, so the idea is getting out from underneath those and opening up to the actual flow of your life as you're experiencing it right now. Okay, So that brings us to the end of the actual show here today. We did a lot of exercises and hopefully gave a few of you the ability to carry the man in the iron mask exercise off into your life. But if you watch the video again, just piece that together. So we did dehypnotizing breath first, then we went into face stretching, then man in the iron mask. Part one, looking and labeling, saying out loud everything you see, labeling all the visual data coming in for 90 seconds. If you do it on your own, do it for 5 minutes. Then we did looking without the labels, so let the visual data come in without the labels. Then we did shoulders to ears, again dehypnotizing breath in between. Then we did listening listening with labeling, excuse me, so saying all the things you hear, then letting the auditory data just pour in, letting it wash over you and paying attention to it. Which can be quite pleasurable and actually quite psychedelic if you do it for 5, 10, 15 minutes and stay fiercely aware of the data as it pours in. Then we did flopping over, some more dehypnotizing breaths. Then we did sensing and feeling, so saying out loud everything you sense and feel in your body. You can even label the emotional content if you want, as long as you locate it somewhere physically. And then finally, feeling without the labeling, so just allowing the sensory data to wash over you, but without believing in the labels, and hopefully letting them drift away while you give primary importance to the actual physical sensations that are going on. Now, by bringing your mind back to that level over and over and over and over and over again throughout the day, what you're going to notice is the fabric of your actual day-to-day life starts to change, and you start to become aware of deeper and deeper layers of what's actually going on for you in your life. And those are the places in which you can make new decisions, and you can start to feel a deeper sense of motivation and inspiration, creativity grow in your life, accompanied by a physical drive that gives you the energy necessary to accomplish those things. Okay, that's ultimately what can happen when you get yourself going on a flow with some of the undoing work, some of the Command Z adventures, paying attention to your breathing, and letting the tension slough off in your life, is then you become aware of that other flow, know more what it is that you want to do, and then have the energy to go ahead and do that. So hopefully that is concise and gives you something you can work on over the next few weeks, and hopefully for the rest of your life, becoming more aware and getting more of what you want. Ultimately, that's what it's all about. So that's it, folks. Go ahead and leave any comments or questions below. And it's nice to see you on the video there, Sean. Sorry we didn't get into too much here, but let's just meet up on Skype later on and say hey. But yeah, folks. So I'll put a link to the intensives. It should be right there in the description here. But if anybody has questions, leave a comment or just write me directly, and we'll get on Skype and chat about this stuff. But hopefully you all enjoyed the experience. Now, one last thing what I want you to do is take out that list of things that we wrote at the beginning, the things that you might be putting off that you want to do. Set a timer for half an hour, and then go take some action on that right now. Don't put it off any longer. So if you wanted to paint and it's been 15 years, well then get out the damn paints and do it. Whatever that is that you've been putting off, take the next 30 minutes and just do it right now. And you'll thank yourself at the end of it. Okay? Doesn't mean you have to stop after 30 minutes, but it means you have to do it for that amount of time. So if at all possible, do something on your list that would bring you some joy and some fun. All right. Have a good time, folks. Thanks for dropping by, Sean.